So I have to stop hitting the desk and everything because my microphone picks up all of that. But I just wanted to go over a video from 2024 that Joe had, which was what Protestants get wrong about the temple veil. So I know I'm late to the party, but I wanted to take Joe up on his offer to hear from Protestants, particularly early on in the video, which I have linked below, where Joe speaks about a couple of Protestant comments under the premise that a real theological argument isn't presented. There are comments made, but not really hey, this happened, and so now the situation is this, or this is the position we're in now. So today what I wanted to do was, from someone who's heard these sorts of arguments before, try to clearly lay out what I've understood to be the Protestant position as a Protestant or as a non-Catholic. So I'm not going to claim that this position is my position, or B, that the position is the position that all Protestants have on this, because as you may know, Protestant views are exceedingly varied on a range of topics, and I'm pretty sure that this one's not going to be any different. So let's dive in. Early on, I'd love to have a nice little video pop up of it, but I'm just going to let you watch via the link. So the comments from John MacArthur, and it says, basically there are no priests, or we need no priests. We have one high priest, Jesus, and that we're all priests. And so Joe says that these appear to be three contradictory positions, but I'd say that's not entirely true. So to be sure, that's my little Joeism that's probably going to feature in here a few times, but to be sure, the way that clip is worded, exclusive of any surrounding context or explanation, I can see why it would appear that way. And if that's all you had to go off was that clip or those short statements from MacArthur, absolutely, it's contradictory or nonsense statements. But I think we can take those statements further, to maybe steelman this position, at least as best we can, so that we can actually see that position addressed appropriately. And we're not, going off on a tangent, say debating baptism saves by ignoring baptism and talking about sola fide instead. In case you're wondering, there is another great video, which I'm going to have to link below now, where Joe's outlining the salvific attributes of baptism, whilst Ryan from needgod.net talks about a completely different topic, all the while undermining his own premise of sola scriptura. But hey, I digress. So let's go into those points from MacArthur anyway. So point one is that we don't need any priests. So we don't need no priests. Now, MacArthur follows this almost immediately with a quote from Revelation 1 that says, "You are a kingdom of priests." So when we look at that there, rather than just looking, hey, we don't need any priests, we need to take that in combination. So rightly, I think we can say from that first point and the scripture together, the position is not that, hey, we don't need any priests. It is, we do not need anyone to hold the office of priest or the role of priest in the way that the Old Testament, or in his view, the way that Catholics would offer the priesthood. So, even I can refute this point, but I just wanted to clarify, John's statements, MacArthur's statements, based on my understanding here, right? So basically that point is, hey, we don't need the office of priest. Now, point two is that we only need one high priest. And he adds, it's not the Pope, it's Jesus. So it's not the Pope. So let's look at these two statements combined. So point one and point two, just to see that, they make some degree of sense together and they're not contradicting each other in the way that Joe seemed to state in his video. And we'll do that before we get into the third point. So it says, we do not need the office of priest. Nobody needs to offer sacrifices for us now. No one on earth need act as a mediator for our reconciliation to God now. Jesus is our high priest who entered the Holy of Holies with the most precious blood to offer something far more valuable than anything as a means to our atonement and our reconciliation. So we don't need the office of priest to go and continually offer sacrifice. We have our one high priest who entered in to the presence of God and offered something far more precious, which was the blood of the Lamb. So there we go. And I could go on about the tearing of the veil at that point, that it's no longer there, but we'll talk about that later, right? So point 3, with those two in mind, the veil is torn. We go right into the Holy of Holies. You're a priest. I am a priest. And that's from MacArthur. And this goes back to that passage in Revelation, that we're a kingdom of priests, with the idea that we don't need a confessional for forgiveness, or we don't need some form of intermediary to approach the throne of God or somehow apply salvation or forgiveness to us, because we have Jesus, the one high priest, who has done that offering once and for all, done the sacrifice once and for all. So I think rather than just say we're all priests, we need to take into account the first part of the comment from MacArthur, to sort of see what he and other Protestants might mean by it. So he said, the veil is torn. We'll go to that. We go right into the Holy of Holies. You are a priest. I am a priest. The veil is torn. So in the temple, in the Old Testament, and in the New Testament too, before it was torn, obviously, the veil separated the holy place from the Holy of Holies. And it was a barrier that only the high priest could enter into. And he could only do that once a year, right? On Yom Kippur. And so that's the Day of Atonement, the most holy day in the Jewish calendar. So the Protestant understanding of this, at least in my experience, is that now we all have access to that presence of God in the Holy of Holies. It's no longer sat behind a barrier that only the high priest could enter into, that only the high priest can access the presence of God, but that barrier has now been torn and done away with. So what it doesn't do, and I think that's probably really important to stress as well, is it doesn't do away with the mediation required, because we know earlier on MacArthur said we have one mediator, not man, but Jesus Christ. So it doesn't do away with mediation that's required, and we still need our high priest, who, rather than entering through a veil, is now seated at the right hand of the Father. But it's saying, hey, we're no longer prevented from that presence of God. Our high priest no longer needs to offer a sacrifice for us each year. The sacrifice has already been made. So I think that kind of sums up the torn veil with relation to MacArthur's comments earlier on. Like, that's what people always do, right? They tend to attack that Catholic priesthood, right? So I know that there's a lot more layers to the full meaning of the torn veil, but I just want to address what I think are those fundamental points that get taken from it, along with those points from MacArthur, those fundamental points that are used to try and attack or disprove the priesthood. So that rather than Joe, seeing these sort of distinct statements sitting that way and looking at those disconnected and seemingly contradictory statements, that we can see a more unified position out of those three from MacArthur, and then we can address those arguments, that one main argument, even in the 3 points, through that lens. So before I leave it here, I want to be super clear that even I, like a simple, non-denominational Protestant offshoot, Bible reader, like, I'm no scholar, right? I can see the glaring holes in that position. But I think Joe's going to do a much better job of clearly outlining that and what that would be from a nice solid position there. Even the combined position that I've tried to sort of steelman the best I can out of my understanding there. But what I will say is this, that Protestants or non-Catholics need to get a better understanding of the difference between what vocational priesthood and personal priesthood is, like what they are, what they're not, and what they were always designed to do or be in the context of the Bible, and how that plays out in our life now. Just knowing what they are and aren't would go a hugely long way toward dispelling some of the very long propagated myths and claims of heresy that Protestants would have against Catholics. And I think likewise, when you can find that common ground and see that and understand that, hey, there's actually, it's not a difference, I think that would make things a lot simpler and a lot more civil online. I think people would start to understand a lot more the beauty of the church as a whole. So, yeah, hopefully that sums that up a little bit for you. I think MacArthur's argument and the way people say, the veil is torn, I think that's pretty well summed up within those points. So, hopefully. But yes, God bless. Stay safe.